All right, welcome everybody. This has been a highly anticipated event here, hosted by CallTools and Outbound IQ. Jason, it's an absolute honor to finally be on with you and to be hosting this event with everybody. And the title for today, Inbound Callbacks, the hidden gem, and as Jason may say, the obvious opportunity. Jason, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Oh, I think you're muted.
Got it. Yeah.
There we go. Welcome.
It's just funny because it is kind of a hidden gem because most people don't see it. But once you start looking at it, you realize that this thing should have been the lowest hanging fruit sitting right in front of your face the whole time.
You are not kidding. You know, working with numerous different clients at CallTools, I've seen this one. I probably talk about it 15 to 20 times a week on different phone calls with the internal team, with the customers. And let's start by defining it. Jason, when we say inbound callbacks, what are we talking about?
So when we talk about inbound, let's just take right off the page inbound transfers, consumer initiated inbound calls that are coming off your website. We're not talking about any of that. What we're talking about specifically is in an outbound use case, you're going to make hundreds of phone calls. You're going to leave messages on people's machines, or they're going to see missed calls from your brand or from your phone number, and they are going to dial that number back.
Yes.
That is an inbound callback.
There you go. So of the outbound calls that you're making, maybe you have different agents, different teams that are using different phone numbers. When they see that missed call on their caller ID that they didn't answer, and they call it back, that's what we're talking about here.
That's all we're talking about. And to that end, I view inbound callbacks a natural extension and a part of your outbound initiative. Your goal is to leverage outbound dials to make contact with a certain number of people in your database. Sure. Some of those answer the phone when you call them. Others call you back. That counts.
That's right. That's right. And you know what's so funny is when I bring this up and we're looking at the stats and I'll see, okay, you got these phone numbers pushing directly to a voicemail box. You know, why? Why are you doing that? Oh, and the answer I get 9 out of 10 times is, well, we're an outbound call center. We make outbound calls. I go, okay. So I go through the next piece. So you're telling me you called, let's call it Jason, 3 minutes ago, and you wanted to talk to him. He's somebody you wanted to speak with. And now he's taking the time out of his day to pick his phone up, dial that number back directly to you. And now you don't want to talk to him anymore?
And not even don't want to, but many times completely fumble it.
That too.
Right. And that's the thing is that it's not like, right now, granted, to your point, we do come across people who simply don't want those callbacks. And the deeper we dig into those, right away you get the vibe, well, something must be off here, right? Why would somebody who's making these outbound calls trying to reach Chaz not want to speak to Chaz when Chaz calls him back?
Right.
Can't fathom that. Can't wrap my head around that. And in many cases, what we find is that it's not so much that they don't want the callbacks, it's that they are so bad at handling the callbacks that they become more of a problem than they're worth.
Sure.
Now,
to me, some time here, Jason. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, to me, that's less of a we don't want to, and underlying that is more of a we're just not sure how to.
Right. And that's very fair. I do see that where, you start to turn those callbacks on, maybe to a team that's never been used to them before. And they have the same script, they have everything ready to go. They're a master of their product, but because it's an inbound call, they go nuts. Their brain doesn't know what to do, right? And I see that very frequently, actually, because what it is, I think what it comes down to is when you're used to doing one thing over and over again, outbound call, and then you layer in something new, an inbound call, I think that's part of it, not being ready for it. And then depending on what system you're using, different dialers, different phone systems, Some people might not even recognize that it is an outbound call. It is an inbound call, and they start treating it like an outbound, which automatically creates friction with the person that they're speaking to.
Yeah, it does create friction, and all of that to me has to do with how you handle. It's not the inherent nature of inbound callbacks. What we're talking about really in the fumbling and the friction is we're talking about the fumbling of it. So we're not perfect with our IVR. We're not perfect with our queue times. We're not perfect with our queue callbacks or our messaging in the IVR. Maybe we're letting too much through to the agent. Maybe we're not being smart enough about filtering out what's coming in. And so we're throwing a whole bunch of good and bad at the agent. When the nice thing about inbound, the callbacks different than outbound, is that you have a couple of seconds. You have a little bit of time when that call comes in to apply intelligence, to query CRMs, to look up call history, to look up available agents, to do all of those things prior to making any kind of a decision. So you don't get that on outbound. If you've got a yeller or a screamer or something on the other end that shouldn't be there, the moment they answer, you're live with them. But you've got things you can do to pave the way on the inbound that you just don't have on the outbound side. It's become my new fascination in inbound and in outbound. And as we go deeper into the session, I'm going to show you mathematically why it's become my new obsession.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely want to get into some of those backing metrics that you have. I've got some generic ones that I can share generally. I think I'll share them now to pique everybody's interest, just as to how effective these callbacks can be. At CallTools, again, I work with numerous different clients across different industries, different sizes, but the metrics hold very true no matter which one it is, right? And it's a crazy number. I couldn't believe it when I first started kind of analyzing this. So let's say I've got a company, it doesn't really matter the industry, but the ones I know for a fact that I've analyzed, home services, roofing was one of them. B2B, SEO, so a company that's completely separate that sells SEO and marketing services and B2B. Solar, which is kind of like home services, and insurance, right? So those are 4 completely different industries calling for completely different reasons. And when we introduced this concept to them and they turned it on, you're able to track your conversions and your metrics. When we looked at their overall conversions for the day, whether that be appointments being scheduled, sales, whatever conversion means to them, and we attributed those to the inbound callbacks and to everything else in another bucket, right, as a whole, 20 to 30% of their overall conversions, 20 to 30, came from the inbound callbacks.
Yep, not surprised.
Crazy number.
Not surprised, because why should your outbound calling initiative, and again, let's even go back one level, and you mentioned we make outbound calls, right?
Sure.
We don't even refer to it anymore as call center. We don't, because what we find is that nobody gets paid or pat on the back for making calls. Nobody. They get paid and patted on the back for making contacts.
That's right.
Contacts. And there's 2 ways to measure your contact rate. One of them is how many dials did I make and how many contacts did I get. That is a perfectly viable way to measure contact rate. But what that measures is your dial cadence, your dialer configuration, maybe the intent of your leads, your speed to lead, various other pieces like that are measured like that. But occasionally the people you're calling are indisposed. They're in a meeting, they're in the bathroom, they're on a plane. There could be a million things that are going on. That inbound callback, when they become available, is the natural extension of that outbound dial. So if we look at contact rate differently, we say, forget about the number of dials. Let's just say I have 100 people today that I'm trying to reach. How many of them did I successfully reach? Now, I don't forget how many dials it took me to do that for a minute, but how many of them did I reach? Some of them you're going to get because they answer your outbound call. Other contacts you will get because they saw your missed call and they call you back. To sacrifice that portion is absurd. And too many customers that we see, too many of the contact centers that we come across put probably 98% of their thought process or 99% of their thought process on outbound. They have this tunnel vision looking that way, right? So here they are yelling, answer the phone, answer the phone, answer the phone. Yet these same people are knocking on the door saying, I'm here, and they don't even know.
Yeah. And you just have to reach out and grab them. And I think I want to take a few minutes. Let's step into a next piece here, Jason. Then I definitely want to get into the backing and the data. You've got a ton of it, and I want to look at it. But how to effectively take these calls? Maybe you are a center, and a lot of them don't take them today, right? And I can't figure out for the life of me why, but they don't want them. So you make the determination. You take that first flag in the ground step, which I think everybody on this phone call, if you were not handling these calls, whether it's intentional or unintentional, this needs to be your wake-up call that you need to start doing something with these inbound callbacks, right? So you put the flag in the ground. Maybe you see this video or this webinar and you decide now is your time. We said there is some things that can happen that maybe make it feel uncomfortable, or maybe it feels like it's not working, right? Yep. And one thing that I give, and there's different things out there, and I think, Jason, I'll give you the AI piece, because this is a perfect segue into the purpose of AI agents and pretty much where they exist in the contact center world today. But what I'd say is, listen, that call comes in. Whatever system you're using, I know with CallTools I can speak to. We do have an indicator that shows you which queue it came in from, which phone number was dialed. It lights up in different colors, so you know exactly where it's coming from. You can also have a whisper in your agent's ear to say inbound call, and they'll know that it's an inbound call, so the agent is not caught by surprise. So I guess the first thing I would say is make sure the agent knows it's an inbound call that's coming in. Second,
and trained, right?
And trained to handle it.
Cannot overstress agent training. Cannot overstress that. In both directions.
In both directions. But here's my golden script. If I have a golden script for today for inbound, here's what I've been having people do. I think it works most of the time. I won't say it's 100%, but it's got to be high 90s. They get that inbound call because they don't know who you are potentially, right? Maybe you didn't have branded calling or something turned on. Hey, you called me? Who is this? Why did you call me? What is going on here? Yes, I did call you. The reason for my call is, it's 10 words. The reason for my call is, and you go right into your regular script. You bridge very easily. I never counted it until on this very moment. It's 10 words, and you layer that into your inbound call script, and you're able to transition very easily from that inbound call back to what your agents are using.
So let's take that a couple of steps forward, right? And let's talk about this. Maybe we can use our inbound IVR to accomplish that. So maybe when the call comes in, I can, in a generic fashion, say something, right? Because you're right. What we find on the inbound callbacks is that 9 out of 10 of them start like you just explained. 9 out of 10 of them start with, hi, I missed a call from this number, and then there's quiet. Or you called me, how come you called this number? And there's this immediate moment of friction. Well, that's because you're putting two people together who were somewhat ambushed. The agent didn't know this person was going to call back, and the person calling really didn't know why. And now we have these two strangers on the phone with each other trying to work something out. So there's this immediate negotiation that has to happen that's very difficult when you're switching from an outbound contact. Sure. So, for example, if the person called you back and you were a funding company, a business funding company, and you said something along the lines of, thank you so much for calling Business Funding Express, the nation's #1 small business lender. We are having the best rates we've had in the last 3 years for small business loans. Please make sure when you speak to an agent that you ask them if you qualify for these once in a lifetime low rates. Hang on one moment while we connect you to an agent. And now you've planted a seed in that person's head that isn't, why are we calling? The thing that's going through their head is, do I qualify or am I interested in small business lending? In either case, you get an answer.
I'll tell you what, you better answer that one if they say yes. That's an even higher qualified and call,
Yes. The person answers the agent answers the phone, and now the prospect says, hey, can you tell me about these low rates? Can we see if I qualify for these rates? That if agents could ask for a way for a call to start, That's how they would ask for the call to start.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you can make that happen with your IVR. Better yet, with the new technologies out there, like with 11 Labs and IVAs and all, you can change accents, genders, languages, friendliness, tone, the message itself. If I know that I called you 20 minutes ago, then when you call in, I can say, "Hi, Chaz, thank you so much for calling us back." Because I know I can look it up. I can look up what happened. I don't have to have a generic message. I could be very, Chaz,
So
thank
now
you
we're
so much
getting
for
into the
calling.
AI piece of having an AI agent screening the call, understanding what's happening. I mean, you've got the data points. Data is everything. And I know, Jason, you have never shared that with me, but I know without asking, that's the truth. So if you have data on your side, why would you not use it and use it to your advantage?
Correct. I could be very specific with my messaging. I can speak to them by name. All of these things start to change the dynamic that you described earlier, which is we slam two people together and they try to figure it out. Now, here's the other pitfall with inbound callbacks that everybody needs to remember, is that contact centers provision phone numbers or use phone numbers. Those phone numbers are business phone numbers. So for any B2B callers or any other type of unscrupulous callers, those numbers are ripe for being put into auto dialers. Now, because of that, your numbers will get calls from people unrelated to your inbound callbacks. Now, this is an important thing to note too. This is not about spam or this or that. It's not about any of those things. It's not about your carriers. It's not that you got bad phone numbers. This is just the nature of phone numbers. If you provisioned 10 phone numbers of perfect native cleanliness, right? Virgins. You provision 10 numbers and you put them into an inbound campaign and you turn that campaign on, immediately you will start seeing calls come in. Immediately. Right. You never used these numbers. You never made why are there calls coming in? Because that is the world we're in. And who's calling? Google's calling, trying to sell you keywords and ads. Verizon's calling. AT&T's calling. Everybody on earth is calling these numbers trying to make contacts, right? And so your job, number one, with these inbound callbacks is if you let those get to your agents, you will forever be frustrated with inbound callbacks. But this is the beauty of the IVR, is that I can look up the phone number of the person that's calling. I can know if this person is in my database. I can know if I called this person 3 years ago or if I called this person 20 minutes ago. And I can take the appropriate action based on that. If somebody's calling my callbacks numbers, these are the phone numbers that I use for outbound. That's my only purpose. I use these for my outbound dialing. If somebody's calling back and if somebody's calling that line and you don't know them, red flag number one. Why is an unknown number calling my callbacks lines? Why? So you can do something with those. You can send those to a menu. You can send those to a voicemail. You can screen them after the fact. You handle them nicely, but maybe those aren't as valuable as the calls from somebody who I do know, who I tried to call them today. Well, if I can determine that.
There's technology solutions out there. Again, I'm trying to keep it agnostic, but I just know the CallTools realm so well. I keep coming back to it. We
work with all the dialers. They can all do this, Chaz.
They can all analyze it. You can analyze when a call comes in if you have an existing contact in your system. Okay, what's the parameters around that contact? Are they a customer? Are they a lead? Are they somebody that is, flagged that, is having a tech problem, right? And you can route those calls dynamically to the proper destination. So even if they call back the wrong number, they get to the wrong place, you accidentally call the customer or a customer called, they can get to the right place. And then you can handle those in a very efficient manner,
Think about home improvement, like you talked about, right? The one thing everybody says in home improvement, it's like, well, maybe they're calling me back. Now, is it possible that they're doing that? Is it possible that they saw a missed call over here, but picked up this other phone?
Sure.
Typed in sure. Of course it's possible. And would you want to miss that caller? No, you wouldn't want to miss that caller. But again, IVRs are cool. You can do stuff with them. So the moment you realize that this person's calling in and you don't know who they are, we don't match this phone number, you could say something like, I'm so sorry, we don't seem to be able to recognize your phone number in our system.
Sure.
Can you enter the 10-digit phone number that we called you on? Now they enter a proper digit phone number. Now you look that one up. Do I have that one? If so, beautiful. Not only do not only do I know who this person is and I've validated them and I can move them into the good path, but at the same time, I've harvested a second contact number.
Awesome. Well, Jason, real quick, I'm taking a look at the comments here. I do see Jasmine Cape in here. She's saying, we've definitely struggled with the IVR process in the past. You always make it sound all easy until I'm knee deep in tears in the IVR, So any tidbits, and Jasmine, please feel free to chime in additionally here if you have any specific questions. But I don't want you to feel that way. IVR should be simple, especially if the AI stuff is incredible. And I do think everyone here should look into it because I think that is the future of IVR and inbound call handling. But let's take that to the side and put that on a shelf right now, Jason, just for Jasmine's use case. IVR to me should be very simple. You have options that come in, they announce themselves. Jason, I'll hand it to you here. I think you're the expert.
Yeah, look, it can be simple, it can be complex, right? It gets more complex when you start building in IVAs and trying to get to self-service, right? So, everybody's talking about AI, for example, AI agents, right? AI agents on the outbound side, landmines, right? Obviously, there's a lot to unpack in terms of using AI on the outbound side. Obviously, it all comes back to consents, but very rarely do we see that being fully in place, right? But those inbound callbacks, right?
Fair game.
Right for AI. And again, those AI agents that are fielding those calls, they can do it in the morning before your agent's logged in. They can do it during the shift when all of your agents are full and you're going to miss a call or it needs to be overflow. You can use it after hours. And again, it has multilingual. So all of a sudden you have the ability to leverage all of these things on the inbound that is much harder to do on the outbound. But this is where those opportunities manifest.
Sure.
Obviously every dialer platform, every CCAS platform is going to have a little bit of a different way that they do their IVRs and their implementation. But the shape, if you looked at it from outer space, is pretty much the same, right? We're accomplishing the same task. They all have some ability to do lookups. They all have some ability to fork decision-making processes. They all have some ability to interface with an external system even, right? So, think about the use case of a call coming in from your website. That IVR could ping your Salesforce. It can create a lead for that record with the source of your website. It can come back with the Salesforce ID and go right into your contacts and into your dialer. Like all these things are at your fingertips on the inbound side that are again incredibly cool.
And looking at the value too, something else, once you get past the IVR and it's made a decision that this is where this call needs to go, here's another one I hear from all the outbound call centers, right, that don't take inbound. Yeah, we're trying to optimize. We've really done a great job with our data strategy. Our, caller ID hygiene is immaculate, and we still want to have our agents busy on the phone more. What call center doesn't want that, right? So when you turn something like this on, when we've done this exercise, now your agents are becoming hybrids essentially, right? They might be waiting, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever your metric is between phone calls. But now when you turn on inbound, now those are filling those gaps, because they're available and now they're taking the inbound calls in between, so
and if you take the time to assemble the steps in the IVR to filter out the noise as best you can, to filter out the unknown callers, to filter out the non-callbacks, to filter out maybe the ones that weren't called today, right, or yesterday, meaning it's an aged callback that maybe is no longer as relevant to me, right? If you take the appropriate decision-making steps inside of your IVR, all of a sudden the agents get what I call just like the pure uncut stuff. You know what I mean? They get the high octane. These are people we just tried to call and now they're calling me back, and they're live people on the phone because I've had some kind of interaction with them, and we're bringing you through to the agent, right? I mean, once they start getting a taste of that, they no longer fear those inbounds. They will salivate when you're able to present them one.
Exactly.
And if you want me to take a minute, I'll show you the data behind it.
Yeah, let's do it. That's what I was going to get there next. I know you said you had some data that you could share. I think you have the ability to share your screen here. So
I do.
At the bottom it should say present.
Check this out right here. So
we're going real into the weeds here and showing some real stuff here. So Jason, thank you. Let me bring this up to the stage.
So here's a customer of ours, a large outbound dialer. Here's month-to-date statistics. Almost 3 million outbound dials so far this month. So they definitely hold their own. Okay. Sorted by dials, you can see that we've got outbound, right? All of those things are happening. We've got big efforts going on the outbound side. And then we have a column of successes. Now, when I sort by successes, all of a sudden we take a look at the number 2 contributor to successes are their inbound callbacks.
Wow.
Now, imagine these three. Wow. These are not contacts. These are conversions.
Wow.
Right?
That's important. Imagine you validated that.
The number 2 contributor of successes. So, wow. To me, again, it's mind-boggling when people say we don't want these.
Yeah.
What is that? Like, what does that mean? And the folks that they say they don't want, they're going to call again in like 30 minutes.
Well, that's the crazy part, you know? And you know what it is too on the inbound? It's such a higher intent from the other party, right? When you're calling somebody outbound and they have to pick up their call, you know, there's a lot of mental things that they have to get through. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's an opt-in lead, high intent, you know, and they're
or maybe you've caught them at a bad time. Right now, they're just
when they've made that intentional decision that I have time right now.
That's right.
To go in here and make this phone call and get somebody on the phone. That's when you need to get them. That's the time. You know,
I've met people like my dad, for example. I've met people who will not answer the outbound call. They will call back. That's the only way they'll speak to you.
That's, you know what? That's a great point too. Some people don't like answering those calls.
Yeah. They want to make sure you're there. They want to make sure you're legit. They want to make sure you answer the call. Now, obviously, you're not going to get these inbound callbacks if your numbers are showing up as spam or scam or some kind of problematic thing. You're not going to get these inbound callbacks, right? But
very true.
If you focus hard on your outbound efforts and you're dialing cleanly and you're dialing correctly and you're not harassing, if you're doing right by the consumer, the odds of you getting that inbound callback go up tremendously. And handling it properly, the odds of you closing and converting that are incredible. Making them wait for somebody who you just called 5 minutes ago who called back, if they're sitting in a queue for 10 minutes, you've lost.
Yeah.
You've lost.
Yeah, and that's the important part too, is once you determine that you're going to do this, which everybody here should, I'll keep saying it until I'm blue in the face, you know, there is something to be said about all the best practices. And this just goes into general inbound call handling, you know, 101. But how quickly you're able to answer that call and get somebody on the phone. You don't want somebody sitting there waiting for a minute or 2 minutes, you know, to connect. So doing these things efficiently is also very important.
And if you look at these inbound callbacks, a couple of things to note. For starters, you start to notice how many of them come in after hours or before hours. Right? So we stopped dialing at 6. Look how many of these lingering callbacks come in after close. Now, this, again, to me, these are all missed opportunities. Sure. And so This is where your AI agent can live. You may find that it makes sense to have an agent or two lingering around for the hour afterwards to close easy callbacks.
We're forwarding these calls. I mean, depending
to a third party. Absolutely.
To a third party, or even to your cell phone or to a group of cell phones.
Absolutely.
And really important calls. You want to be handling them.
How many of these are calls from your website? How many of these, if we start dialing at 9, did you get a call from your website at 8:30? Right.
Yeah.
What are we doing? What are we doing with those? Are we optimizing them? Or do we have them on our radar, or did we just lose it completely?
And here's the truth, and I could pull the stats, but I think it's I think, Jason, you probably have better stats than I do. Nobody's leaving voicemails.
Nope.
Nobody is going to leave you a voicemail. So unless it's really, really like, they need something very badly, in which case you better make sure you get that voicemail, because it's probably gold. But that's probably the one voicemail you'll get out of. I don't even want to put numbers out there, but the percentage-wise, it's probably 1% or less are going to leave you a voicemail.
And now this part too, I love, because we're always, obviously, if we're doing any kind of lead processing, which most sales organizations or sales centers are using some type of lead or records, right? The prospects that they're calling on. When I filter to only the inbounds, right? Only the inbounds, the inbound callbacks. I'm telling you that you want the best measurement of your data sources. Look at how their inbound callbacks perform. I'm telling you that when you get the wherewithal to be able to measure these things, you will find that the way people call back, the tone of the prospects when they call you back, is perhaps one of the best indicators of exclusivity.
Sure.
Is perhaps one of the best indicators of intent. Is perhaps one of the best indicators of recency. It's one of the best indicators of a good lead provider that you're going to find out there. I mean, there's a big difference, right? If we just look at total successes.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a big difference between somebody who's calling back 16,000 inbound callbacks, converting into 612 successes, versus 16,000 callbacks converting into 419. And if I showed this order, whatever these codes mean, if I showed this order to my customer, I promise you they would be like, yeah, that's the order of our good lead sources.
That's true too. You know what? Because these are real. And that's another thing too. It's validating the phone number. It's a form of phone number validation as well.
Great point.
Inbound call.
Great point. Because how's this? Let's say you missed the inbound call, right? You've got 100 records in the system. You've made 100 dials. 2 of those have called you back. You didn't get them, but 2 of them have called you back. I'm going to contend that you've learned something about these 2 records.
Sure.
They are of better quality or more likely to convert than the other records.
That's
not
right.
Fielded it, but because there's a sign of life on the other end of that number.
Right.
Taking the time to call me back. If you ignore that information, and now those 2 records to your outbound dialer look exactly like the other 98, you've made a mistake.
Yes. And that's another point, kind of off topic of what we're talking about today, but not really. All of you who are watching and engaging with this event, I would challenge you to go through your leads, go through your dialer, look at all the leads that have not converted but have tried to call you back at least once in their lifetime. Yep. Segment those into a list. And
watch what happens.
I'm not a gambler, man. I go to Vegas. Maybe I'll spend $20. I'm a slot machine here and there. I don't gamble, but I will gamble this. I'll bet you'll find that your highest connection rate and hopefully your highest conversion rate comes from that data segment. So awesome. Well, Jason, I think we're getting close to the end here. And I want to open it up to everyone in the audience here. I know, Jasmine, we touched on your question about IVR. I hope we gave you some valuable insights there.
Jasmine, I know you. If you're struggling with anything, just ping my cell phone.
There you go. So there you go. Jason will hook you up. And yeah, this one is huge. I think that, if we haven't made it abundantly clear, you need to be handling your inbound callbacks. You need to create a process to do it efficiently. And if you're not doing it today, this is the wake up call. Okay. Please, if I see you, I'm going to be at CCW in about 2 weeks. If we connect and you reference this and you still are not taking those inbound callbacks, I don't know. I'm a pretty nice guy, but I might get a little upset, Jason, anything you've got here in closing?
No, the only thing that I'll close with is this: is that the inbound callbacks are the fruit of your outbound dials, and that is your fruit, and you should be eating it.
That's right.
And there's no reason to say no. You've earned that call. You've earned that dial. Do well with it and convert it and get it out of your system, because the fewer outbound dials you have to make, the less likely you are to make a mistake, the less likely you are to get a complaint, the less likely you are to burn your numbers, the less likely you are to get a spam tag, the less likely you are to get a TCPA violation or any kind of compliance violation. The quicker you can complete this with every prospect in your database, the better for everything downstream.
Amazing. And I shared it earlier, and I'll share it again in closing. The clients that I've seen adopt this, it's not 2 to 3%, which to me would be enough to do this in their conversions. It's 20 to 30%. It is a huge number. And what would that do for your business if you could instantly achieve 20 to 30% more conversions? I think I don't know anybody out there that wouldn't want that. So in closing, Jason, for anyone who doesn't know already, Outbound IQ, Outbound A&I, real quick, what is it you guys do?
We help outbound contact centers, anybody doing consumer outreach, we help them do better at it. We help them reach more people. We do it through a combination of technology and software and automation, as well as plain old roll up your sleeves and sit down and analyze spreadsheets and help you figure out where your opportunities for improvement are. We integrate with dialers. CallTools is one of them. We service lots of CallTools customers, and that there's no such thing as a perfect contact center, which means that even within your current use case and workflow, I promise you, there are a million little things that you can tighten to make for a better output.
Huge.
Okay.
And I've been in this space for quite some time now. I don't know anybody more bright that's going to have more insight to bring to you in your call center than Jason and his team. It's a pleasure, Jason. Thank you so much for being on with us here today. Again, I'm Chaz Tedesco with CallTools. We have a cloud contact center solution, power dialer. We also support inbound call handling, basically anything you could think of if you're making or receiving phone calls within your call center. We can help you. And if you're looking to get in touch, go ahead, Jason. Do you have anything else in closing?
No, I just wanted to echo your thank you to everybody who joined today.
Of course, thank you to everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and put up on the screen now just some contact information for myself and Jason and his team. If you're interested in reaching out, here's the information. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your very busy day, I'm sure, to attend this amazing event. We'll be sharing it all over for the replay in case you missed it. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.